Good evening. Welcome to Your Kingdom Come. If you've been following along, we're going to close out with Ecclesiastes 11 and 12 and close out with this book and move on to who knows what's next. Hopefully, something enjoyable for all of us. But like I do every time I start Ecclesiastes, I've been doing them two chapters at a time. This is the last two chapters, 11 and 12. Ecclesiastes in the Hebrew meaning Kohelet, the preacher or teacher, coming from King Solomon. King Solomon was the son of David, a powerful king. King Solomon was awarded with building the first temple, the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. He also was given the most wisdom known to man, and he also had a lot of stumbles in his life, to include idolatry, some issues he had with other people in the region, and fighting and violence, and also just not hearing from God like he should have been. So I just want to close out with 11 and 12. These aren't too long chapters, so it shouldn't be a very long video, but let's go ahead and get started. So the uncertainties of life. Send your grain across the seas, and in time profits will flow back to you. But divide your investments among many places, for you do not know what risks might lie ahead. When clouds are heavy, the rains come down. Whether a tree falls north or south, it stays where it falls. Farmers who wait for perfect weather never plant. If they watch every cloud, they never harvest. So, first, to cover the first two verses, what he's discussing here is putting up provisions. And people that say you shouldn't prep, I think that's foolish advice. Yes, you shouldn't be obsessed. It shouldn't become your idol. But you should prepare and put provisions up for the rainy season, the winter season. Animals do it, don't they? Learn from the animals. So even us, when you're having a lot of growth or profit, set it aside. Be balanced. Put your stuff aside and prepare for those rainy seasons. And then when he talks about the fourth, that's kind of, again, farmers who wait for the perfect weather never plant. Now, that can go along with, at one point, I'm not going to lie to you, when I would go to witness or share the gospel or the scriptures with someone, I almost was waiting for that perfect time to plant. Now, the scriptures multiple times calls us farmers, and we are laborers, and we go out and plant seed, which is the word, to people, and hopefully it plants on their heart. Now, it's not our mission to convert them. Only our Creator can soften the heart for the actual conversion process. But we are told to plant that harvest. We are told to throw that seed out and let it land on that ground, and hopefully that ground is soft. But even if it's not, that's our mission. We're like the mailman delivering the mail. Just as you cannot understand the path of the wind or the mystery of a tiny baby growing in its mother's womb, so you cannot understand the activity of God, who does all things. Plant your seed in the morning and keep busy all afternoon, for you do not know if profit will come from one activity or another, or maybe both. So that's six again with planting your seed. Again, like I've said many times, the book of Ecclesiastes and the scriptures are one big parable, meaning that they all have practical application, practical advice, but there's a much deeper spiritual meaning behind it. So you have to peel back those layers. So when he talks about plant your seed in the morning and keep busy all afternoon, again, if you look at seed as code word being the word, keep continuing preaching, continuing speaking the gospel, speaking to people about the scriptures, plant that seed. Yes, physically you plant your seed as a farmer, but spiritually you want to do it as well. Light is sweet, how pleasant to see a new day dawning. When people live to be very old, let them rejoice in every day of life. But let them also remember there will be many dark days. Everything still to come is meaningless. So here he goes back into this funk again, where he's totally just perplexed at life. And you see this wonderful dichotomy, this wonderful balance of, I don't want to say good and evil, but thoughts running through his mind on two sides. One, it's meaningless. Next, it's eternal. Which one is it? Solomon, pick or choose. But at this point, God, his spirit is revealing to you, this is what can happen to even what you would call the best of us, the wisest of us, those that were all the way lifted up. Young people, it's wonderful to be young. Enjoy every minute of it. Do everything you want to do. Take it all in. But remember that you must give an account to God for everything you do. So just because you think that your parents aren't watching, or you think that your wife or husband or children aren't watching, just keep that in mind. You will give an account for everything. God is spirit. He is not a man. But remember that youth, with a whole life before you is meaningless. So here he goes again. Don't let the excitement of youth, this is Ecclesiastes 12, don't let the excitement of youth cause you to forget your Creator. Honor him in your youth before you grow old and say, life is not pleasant anymore. So now you see again in just 2 verses how, I don't want to say double-minded, but I mean, you could pretty much see how he's just bouncing and he's dealing with this inner struggle. I really hope this is relatable to someone, especially a believer and even an unbeliever that may be questioning and maybe questioning, is there a creator? Is there a God? These scriptures are so authentic because they're so, what's the word? They're so rigid. They're so rough. They're so in your face. They're not, this isn't just fluffy stories to make you feel good. Sadly, it's been used that way and people don't get proper balance. Remember him before the light of the sun, moon, and stars is dim to your old eyes, and rain clouds continually darken your sky. Remember him before your legs, the guards of your house start to tremble, and before your shoulders, the strong men stoop. Remember him before your teeth, your few remaining servants stop grinding, and before your eyes, the women looking through the window see dimly. So he's saying at all times, remember him, even when your lights are about to go out, spiritually and physically. Remember him before the door to life opportunities is closed and the sound of work fades. So you got to work in the daylight, for we don't know when that hour will come when night falls. Now you rise at the first chirping of the birds, but then all their sounds will grow faint. Remember him before you become fearful of falling and worry about danger in the streets. This could become very, very relatable soon. Before your hair turns white like an almond tree in bloom and drag along without energy like a dying grasshopper, and the caperberry no longer inspires sexual desire. Remember him before you near the grave, your everlasting home, when the mourners will weep at your funeral. Yes, remember your Creator now while you are young, before the silver cord of life snaps and the golden bowl is broken. Don't wait until the water jar is smashed at the spring and the pulley is broken at the well, for then the dust will return to the earth, and the spirit will return to God who gave it. I'll repeat that again. For then the dust will return to the earth, and the spirit will return to God who gave it. Everything is meaningless, says the teacher. Completely meaningless. Keep this in mind. The teacher was considered wise. And when he talks in this seems like first person, I want you to understand how writing would take place back then. You would have somebody that would be like a scribe, someone that would write down your thoughts, and you would be walking around or maybe laying, and you would be saying these thoughts, and someone else would be recording them. So I don't want you to get too mixed up, because early on I had a question where it always seemed like they were talking in the first person, and I said, that seems odd. If Solomon's talking, why does he always relate to himself? And other scriptures as well, it seems that way. But when you learn context, you learn that there was someone writing this down. So when he says, keep this in mind, the teacher was considered wise, obviously he's talking about Solomon, but most likely this is another writer relating all his thoughts. I hope that helps you out a little bit when you're reading the scriptures. And he taught the people everything he knew. He listened carefully to many proverbs, studying and classifying them. The teacher sought to find just the right words to express truths clearly. The words of the wise are like cattle prods, painful but helpful. That's so true and evident. Truth hurts, and I always would say, and the scriptures back this up, you'd rather have a harsh word that's truth than a foolish lie, and that'll make you feel better. And you hear that in the book of Isaiah, and it's also mentioned in the book of 2 Timothy in the New Testament, the New Covenant, the Brit Hadashah. You'll see that multiple times people want to be lied to. They want to hear smooth things, tickled ears. They don't want the truth. And at times, even believers don't want to hear the truth. They want to just say that their life is right. The Spirit told them this, and that's scary. You have to be careful what you're putting the Spirit on. Sometimes it's better to just absorb, be quiet, and take it all in. The words of the wise are like cattle prods, painful but helpful. Their collected sayings are like a nail-studded stick with which a shepherd drives the sheep. But my child, let me give you some further advice. Be careful, for writing books is endless, and much study wears you out. So those that are chasing that head knowledge, it would be a sad life if one of the things you'll hear is, well done, my good and faithful servant, if you've been laboring for the kingdom, but all you've been doing is Bible study upon Bible study and reading upon reading and reading and all this head knowledge, but you never went out there. It's almost like You learn about warfare, me being a soldier. You learn about warfare, you learn about it, but then you never go out to the battlefield, but then you claim to know what it's like to be in the battlefield. Doesn't that sound odd? Or someone that claims that they know all this head knowledge of the scriptures, but never go out and approach anyone, get uncomfortable, are challenged a little bit, maybe go into an area you're not familiar with, speak to a couple people, maybe get out of your comfort zone, if ultimately if that's what you're being called to do. But you won't know what you're called to do till you totally submit and you become that open vessel to be used. So I would just say be careful about all that studying you're doing and all that head knowledge if you're not applying it, because then it's useless information and it changes you from being a wise person to a fool. That's the whole story. Now, here is my final conclusion, and I love this part. This is my favorite verse of the whole book. I hope it's yours too, because this defines the book to me. That's the whole story. Now, when he says the whole story, this is the whole book. Here is my final conclusion. Fear God and obey his commands, for this is everyone's duty. He didn't say man, woman, Jew, Gentile. He didn't say this person, that person. So I would advise anybody who opens up this scripture and stumbles upon this, read Ecclesiastes 12, verse 13, and imprint it in the back of your mind. What is the duty of all mankind? Man, woman, child. Fear God, reverence and all that I've mentioned before, not fear like a Thor hammer, even though sometimes that might be needed too to get your knees to repentance. But you want to obey his commands, for this is everyone's duty. God will judge us for everything we do, including every secret thing, whether good or bad. So I just wanted to get on here, jump on 11 and 12, close out the book of Ecclesiastes. We'll move on to something else. For any of you that are listening, I thank you. It's a privilege and an honor, and it's a blessing to just be allowed to share this with you and have breath in my lungs to even be up today to do this. I don't want to take none of that for granted. So I just thank you. And like I always end, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. In the name of our mighty, great Creator. Peace.